Hello everybody. So we've had a lot of fun running trains on our layout here. And our layout consists of a one 4x8 sheet of plywood here on the right with the HO scale trains running. And then on the left we have a 4x4 sheet of plywood that has the N scale trains running. And we've had a lot of fun with this layout, and we've done a lot of videos showcasing our HO and N scale collection. And yeah, we've had a lot of fun doing that, but now we feel like it's time for a change. So we are going to dismantle this layout, and we're going to reconfigure our layout to be more of an L shape with a little gap in between the sheets of plywood so that we can put some bridges in. So we think that'll be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more of a change, so that'll be nice. So just to let you know how we came to this layout here. This is our first layout down here in the basement, and we have limited space, and so we had to be very careful how we used our space. And we just wanted to kind of get something up and running, and that's why we did the HO layout on one sheet of plywood and the N scale on the other side. So for our new layout, like I said, we're going to do an L shape, so we'll keep the 4x8 sheet of plywood. We'll take that 4x4 sheet of plywood on the left and we'll move it down, toward the corner, the near corner here. And then we'll put a gap in between the plywood so we can run bridges over it. And then what we'll do is have one loop of HO scale track in an L shape. And we'll have one loop of N scale track, also in an L shape, running right along beside it. Our plan is to put the N scale track on the outside because for the HO we want to kind of retain the middle of the layout so that we can maybe put some switches in and maybe an engine shed or something along those lines. But this has been a really good layout for us. It's been a really good kind of first layout. It was pretty cost effective. It's not super elaborate like you see on YouTube. There's some people who do some really elaborate, realistic looking stuff. That's definitely not us here. This layout we just kind of set up for fun and played ticket around with it over time. I mean, how many other layouts have zoo animals running around and also dinosaurs? So yeah, we've had a lot of fun. So we're going to go ahead and dismantle this, and we're going to take you on the journey of us reconfiguring our layout. Okay, with the layout all cleaned off and dismantled, let's go over a couple of things that went into the setting up of just kind of the base platform here. So what we have here is a 4x8 sheet of plywood here, this long way here, and then we've got a 4x4 piece over here that was kind of formed a T, a T shape. And so our N scale went on this guy right here. Our HO scale was on here, if you remember. And then this is covered by sheets of Woodland Scenics grass mat. And what we were going to do on the plywood was fasten them on there with contact cement. But that just seemed like an awfully messy way to go, especially if we messed it up and we had to replace it. So what we did was we used this kind of cleat system right here where we just kind of put one end over the edge of the plywood, and then we took a strip of plywood here and basically just cleated in, you know, the bottom here. You can see it just folds over, and then this is fastened. And then we came down to the other end. And what we did was we pulled down as taut or as tight as we could on the mat from the other, you know, pulling it from the other side that was cleated down, and then we fastened it. And then we fastened it here. I put a little light on there so you can see, and that held pretty good. It can kind of come up a little bit, but it's very flat. There's very little bubbling here. So we thought that was a pretty good system to do. And we did the same thing over here. You know, we cleated it on one side, then pulled it as tight as we could, and then cleated it on the other side. I clamped it in with a little strip of wood and some screws. And here you can see there's a little bit of bubbling here over time. It was pretty tight when we put it in, but it bubbled up over time. Now, as far as underneath goes, what we did here, and we got some stuff here, is that we actually bought a bunch of these plastic sawhorses from Home Depot. And we bought them in pairs, and they were probably about, I want to say, if I went to Home Depot now, I think they're about $40, but I think we bought them around Christmas time and they were on sale. And I think we got them for like $29 or something for two. So they were fairly cheap. So we have 8 here holding up our 2 pieces of plywood. There's 2 on each end. Probably could have got away with 1, but that would have felt like it was like kind of teetering too much. And the other thing these have is right here, they've got this little notch in here. And so our 2x4, you know, our plywood is fastened to the 2x4, and the 2x4 sits right in that groove right there in the sawhorse. So there's no chance that they're gonna roll off. So that's kind of the construction of it. Yeah, so here we go. So now we're going to reconfigure everything here so that we have an L shape. And then what we're gonna do is separate these 2 pieces here by about a foot maybe. So it'll be a little bit actually over 8 feet. It'll be this 4-foot section here, this 4-foot section here with about a foot gap. And then we're gonna run a bridge from here to here once it's in the L. And then the other side, I think we'll just join that with a piece of plywood and just kind of have that as dry land, if you will. One of the things that we're gonna have to do is, if you look underneath here, there is some overlap on the sheet of that Woodland Scenics grass mat. And so what we're gonna have to do is take a knife and cut it like right to the edge, so that when we have our bridge, it's not like overlap. There's no grass mat overlapping. So we're gonna have to cut that flush, but that's okay. We'll just grab a utility knife and nice sharp one, and we should be able to cut that off no problem. All right, so it's time to reconfigure the surface here. Okay, so to cut this little flap off here, I just want to make sure I get a nice straight cut and it doesn't look like a super hack job. So I have got my straight edge here. I've got it clamped, and it's like right to the edge of the plywood there. So we're just going to grab our knife. Okay, so we think we've got our adjustments here pretty good. So here's our one side of our L here looking down the long way. And then over here is our gap. So we'll have a bridge across here. We'll put a piece of, let me just swing over here. We'll put a piece of plywood in here, and we'll put some grass mat on it. And then that'll be and make a nice curve around here. I know that camera's getting in pretty close, so it's kind of hard to see, but yeah. And then this is the other side of our L. We're going to test lay down our track and make sure our distances are right and things like that. So we'll do a little test thing here, and then we'll make any adjustments to the table based on the length of the loop and all that stuff. And yeah, then we'll start making our bridge. We might put a temporary bridge in there because we want to do get a decent looking bridge there, and that might take a little bit of time. We may 3D print something, or we may make something by hand on the in the wood shop. Not sure. So the bridge might be a little temporary thing, but we'll be able to put down the the little land bridge that will connect the two tables on this side right over here and get that done. Okay, so with our railroad dismantled, and now we have our new layout in the L shape that we want, with a little gap in between the two pieces of plywood. We want to make sure that the track that we anticipate putting on there will fit. So as you can see here, we put on our N scale track right beside our HO scale track, and we just test ran it around the entire perimeter, just to make sure that everything fits the way we want it to. One of the adjustments that we made as far as the dimensions go is that we pulled this table here back a little bit this way. And the reason that we did that was we wanted to have a little bit more distance here so that we can backstop this side of the layout with trees and maybe some shrubs and things like that. So we needed some solid plywood to do that with. There's a little bit of an overhang there. This can't bear any weight, but that's all right. We're only about an inch off the edge of the plywood. So like I said, we wanted to be able to have some solid wood back here to maybe do some things. So we did pull the layout back this way in order to do that. Okay, and then finally, after taking all the track off to clear off the top of the layout, we're going to release this cleat here that holds our grass mat kind of taut and in place, and then we'll roll the mat back that way because we have to get under here in order to do our pocket screws for our land bridge. And also we kind of want to give this a retighten. So we'll take off this cleat here. We'll leave the one at the far end fastened, and then we'll pull here again, kind of making it taut, and then refasten this just to kind of, freshen up the firmness of the grass mat. Yeah, and then let's make our land bridge and move on from there. Okay, with the track all cleared off, the first thing we're going to do is remove the grass mat. So we're just going to undo this cleat right here with some screws. With the grass mat rolled back, you'd be able to see like one of the techniques we use to put this together. So we showed you before that these sawhorses have a groove in them that are designed to hold a 2x4 on edge, just like that. So we didn't attach the 2x4 to the plywood and then set them in the sawhorses. What we did was we set the 2x4s in the sawhorses. We'd lay the plywood on top of the 2x4s. And then what we did was we snapped a line from the center of the 2x4 on this end to the center of the 2x4 on the opposite end. And then it gave us a nice line to put our screws, so that they were guaranteed to be in the center of the 2x4 all the way along. So if you're familiar with how chalk lines work, that's a pretty standard construction technique. The other thing we did was we countersunk all of the screw holes, because you don't want those screw holes, popping up through the grass mat. So just a little quick look at the underlayment here. Now, a lot of people also put that pink foam, that sheet foam insulation, it's about an inch thick, I think, thereabouts, on top of their plywood before putting their grass mat over, or whatever the final texture is going to be. And that's because it's easier to drill into the insulation when you're planting trees and so forth. We didn't bother with that step. We just did straight into the plywood. As a matter of fact, you can see a lot of our tree holes here. So the next thing we want to do is figure out what dimensions we need for a land bridge. So what we're going to do here is measure across. Of course, you have to have good measurements to begin with here. So we're about 21 inches right here, a 21 inch span to join these two pieces of plywood. So it's going to be 21, and then we agreed that we'll probably go inland, if you will, 20 inches. So we're going to come in about this far. So it'll be 21 by 20. We could do 21 by 21. I mean, this is not exact science. This is more kind of art than, science. So, I think whatever floats your boat, I think is what you do. So we decided, 20, 21. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have it come out this way at a 45-degree angle so that we kind of have this eased corner here. We won't use the whole eased corner based on our test fit, but it just gives us a few more options here as far as, maybe some building placement or something like that. And we may even have a tunnel, incorporate a tunnel here on the land bridge. So we'll have plenty of room to work with. So the next step is to get our sheet of plywood and to get the shape cut on the table saw. Okay, so here's our setup. We're all set to create our 20-inch wide land bridge. So we have kind of a big sheet of plywood here, 4x4 sheet of plywood. We're gonna have to rip that down. What we're gonna do is the far edge is a little rough. So our blade is about 22 inches away from the fence on the far side here. Let me see if I can get my tape measure here. It's about 22 inches. So what we're going to do is rip it at 22 inches, and then we'll cut it down to 21 inches by ripping off the other side and kind of neaten that up. That's a little rough over there. So we want to make sure we have two nice, good sides here. So we'll give it 2 rips. One at 22 inches, and then we'll rip it down to 21 inches with, making a cut on either side so that both cuts are nice and neat. Now my table saw is super loud, so we're not going to show that pass because the sound will just be overwhelming. I know we could cut it down in editing, but yeah, so we'll see you on the other side of the cut. Right, so after a little bit of table saw work, a little bit of miter work, here is our land bridge. Now it's okay, like you might notice this is a little rough here, but that's okay because that's going to be covered by turf and whatnot. So here, what this is going to do is kind of slide in here. We'll square up those tables to it right here. So this is what's going to happen next. And then what we're going to do first, before we do that, is kind of put these little cleats, these little shelves under here, and then this will sit right on top of these little shelves in place. These could almost be considered temporary, although we probably won't take them out, but we'll put those in. And then what we're going to do is we'll fasten the land bridge to each piece of plywood using pocket screws. So let's get that done. All right, so as you can see here, we put in these little cleats or little shelves for our land bridge, and that's really just to hold them in place until we get the pocket screws in there to kind of hold them into each piece of plywood. So these could really be temporary and be removed after the pocket screws are in, but we're just going to leave them in because they are extra support. They will be out of sight, and so we're just going to leave them. They're just held in by a couple screws from below, so let's get a shot of that. Now we could have glued these underneath and clamped them in place, and good wood glue the wood would break before the glue gave way. But we typically don't like to glue things here with these layouts that could be considered temporary. We want to be able to dismantle them whenever we can and change and configure them. So we don't use glue, even though we easily could, and it would be a good solution, just not for us. So here we're just going to take our land bridge, kind of drop it on our shelves here. And we'll have to, square everything up. But the pocket screws will take care of that. They'll draw everything right in. And so now, you have an idea of what it's going to look like at the end. We'll have a nice kind of transition here going on to this sheet of plywood. We have an open end at the other end for our bridge feature. So the next step here is to get our Craig jig and pocket screw these pieces of plywood together. Okay, so what we're going to do here very quickly is we're just going to make maybe 4 pocket holes or 5 pocket holes along the long part of our land bridge here. If you can see, it's standing on edge, and it is sitting inside of a Craig pocket hole jig right here. So the spacing here isn't super important. You know, like I said, nobody's going to see this. This isn't cabinetry work. We're just trying to hold a few pieces of plywood together. So we're just going to go right down here. This is the Craig bit. You can see it's got a tapered end there. It's all calibrated to go down the right depth. So we're just going to pick a hole. These holes are spaced more for like cabinetry work. If you were doing, you want things to be spaced evenly, but we're just going to use one of these holes and work our way down. So fit the Craig jig, the bit of the Craig jig bit in to one of those holes until it stops, and then you can just start to drill. And just drill till the bottom's out. And as you can see here, it makes a pocket for the screw to go in, and the idea here is that the screw will be under the surface. You know, you get it in at an angle so you can kind of, so that you can, you know, screw things, you know, butt end to butt end here on the plywood, and then, yeah, that's how that will work. So we'll just kind of, like I said, we'll make 4 or 5 of these, and okay, so there's that side, and now we'll just do the other side, and we'll be good. And again, this isn't a Craig jig tutorial. You know, we're just showing the various really useful tools that we have here in the workshop that we don't use them often, but when we need them, they really come in super handy. So we're just going to put things in place right here. And then the last thing, we'll use our other drill here, is you have the Craig screws work on a square bit. So if you can zoom, if you can see that, that's the screw. That is the head, the screw, you know, the screwdriver, and they go like that. They're square heads. So basically what we do here, again, super easy, is we're just going to take our screw. Doesn't matter what hole we start on. We just want to make sure that we have our land bridge placed correctly. That's all. So here we're kind of corner to corner there, which is good. We'll do this side first. See how that draws up nice? And we'll just work our way right down the line. Don't over tighten. Just draw it up. The little shelves on the cleats on the bottom are kind of keeping the plywood semi-level to itself. There's a little bit of a dip there, but again, you know, we'll be covering this with mat and all that, and hopefully you won't notice. One thing you'll notice too is that we didn't put any pilot holes on this side of the plywood. All we did was make the pocket holes on this side, and these screws kind of self-tap right into wood on the other side, so you don't need any pilot hole over here to receive the screw. You know, they just kind of go in and they're super sharp, and they just basically cut into anything. And then finally on this side, we'll just make sure our 2 sections here are all butted up against each other. Butted. Again, don't over tighten. You don't want to strip through the end grains on wood is particularly weak, so you don't want to. You want to make sure you don't kind of over tighten those. Just once it's snug, it's between again the little shelves that we put under there and the pocket screws. This probably isn't going to go anywhere. And again, we do want to kind of make it easy to dismantle and reassemble, even if we want that. So. And there we go. There's the land bridge. Nice and sturdy. Once we get some mat over that, it'll be good. You won't really, these little divots here, you know, the mat will be over that. It'll be unlikely that we'll have anything on top of that that will push through the mat. So, not worried about that. So the last thing we want to do now is create our little bridge. And we're going to use the same technique, maybe not exactly the same, obviously not the same cuts, but we're just going to put a little strip of wood connecting the two pieces of plywood on that side. It'll be as wide as we need the track to be, to receive the track across. But like I said, we'll probably do this pocket jig thing here too, because we want to be able to take it out, when we're ready to put in a real bridge, or when we, do that. So let's get that done, and then we can put the mat on, and then it'll be ready to put some track down. Okay, for the temporary bridge side, we took the same approach that we did for the land bridge over there. We're going to hold the plywood up from below with a couple of little shelves here, and like before, those are screwed in. From below by two screws there, and that holds it. That'll give a nice shelf there. It'll leave a depth the same thickness as the plywood that we're using for that temporary bridge. And then the next thing we're going to do is on that temporary bridge, just like what we did with the land bridge, is that we're going to make pocket holes. So we're going to put in 2 on each side of the bridge. Okay. And again, we're not looking for exact spacing from one end to the other. We're just trying to make sure that the holes are kind of evenly spaced and evenly distant from the ends. Okay, so last we just have to fasten it into place. Okay, so just one final small detail on the Craig jig pocket holes that we made in the pocket joinery is that if this were, again, finished, for the carpenters out there who might be cringing that the holes are visible, if this were fine carpentry, we'd put the holes on the other side and make sure that nobody could see those under normal circumstances. But like I said, the land bridge will be covered with a mat, so they'll never see these pocket holes. But this is a temporary bridge, and these pocket holes are facing up. And again, I'm not worried about it because it is temporary. But if we wanted to cover these pocket holes so that you didn't notice them, Craig does supply, you can make these on your own with dowels, but Craig does supply these dowels here that are kind of cut at an angle. And what they do is they slide in along the contour of the pocket hole. Now they don't fit in completely. What you do here is that once you've got them in there, you take a sander and you sand them smooth. Well, you glue them in first, sorry. Little wood glue in there to hold them in. Let that dry, or at least get to the point where these won't come out, and then just sand them flat. And then you've got a nice cover for that pocket hole there. So just a kind of a loose end to tie up in case people were concerned that these are very noticeable. Whatever. You can cover them up and sand them flush and then paint or whatever. Okay, just to summarize where we're at and where we go next. So we now have our platform all secured together. We've got our 4x8 sheet of plywood there on the right. We've got our 4x4 piece of plywood separated from that now on the left, and then we've got a land bridge to connect those on the far angled piece out there. And then we have a temporary bridge on the near side for that feature for our railroad. So the next step now is to put some grass mat on top of the land bridge over there, the land feature over there. So let me just we do have an extra piece. Let's see if I can zoom in on it there. You can see it kind of draped over that cabinet over there. And that is the same shade as this grass right here. It actually came off the same roll. That's the back side of it, but you might be able to see the green there under the hump Yeah, so anyway, so we're going to start now at this point, now that we have our platform kind of done, if platform is the right term, I think you know what I mean. We'll just start putting down the base grass on it. We may want to, because that bridge is temporary, we don't know how temporary it's going to be, so we may want to run down to the hardware store and get some matte black paint and just cover that up so it just looks less woody, you know, until we figure out what we're going to do bridge-wise. So maybe we'll do that tomorrow or the next day. But for now, we're going to put the grass mats back on and get us back to baseline so we can start laying down some track. Okay, so we've taken that extra kind of remnant of the grass mat that we had left over from our last application, and we've put it over the land bridge. That's the piece that we have to cover. So we have one edge held down with a straight edge there on the right, and that's just really kind of two purposes: to hold it in place so it doesn't bunch up as he's going to cut it with the razor knife, and also to provide a straight edge so that as he gets further down into it, he doesn't kind of wander into where we don't want it to be cut. And then he's going to cut off the far corner, which you can't see from here. It's kind of hanging down, and that will give us a piece to work with that's more manageable. And then the next step after that will be to take some contact cement and glue that down to that land bridge. But for now, we're going to cut it to size. So the first thing he's going to do is cut that hanging corner down. And so he's just going to cut straight across. And what we're doing, though, to keep in mind, is that we're leaving an overlap on all sides. So we definitely want overlap on the two pieces of plywood, the 4x4 piece of plywood and the 4x8 piece of plywood, because the mat that's kind of rolled off here will just go right back over that and cover those seams. But the other cuts are going to be a little rough, and then we'll fine tune or fine trim them a little bit later on in the process. We just want to get the size manageable right now so that we can glue it down. So there's one, and then I'll take the straight edge and cut off that remnant there on the right. And he'll go right along the straight edge. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to use contact cement to attach this piece of grass just to this piece here. We're not going to use it on the rest. We already have the system where we pull the mat tight and then kind of clamp it down on either end. But because this has a tapered or an angled end here, we can't really use that same technique. And we don't want the grass to float around either. So in this case here, we're going to go ahead and use contact cement. Now, we're not going to go too heavy with it. We really just want enough contact cement to just hold it down so it doesn't float around. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. So with contact cement, you do a coating on both pieces that you're going to attach to. So in this case here, we're just going to give it a final stir. So in this case here, we're going to coat the back of the grass piece, and then we're going to coat the piece of wood. And we're not going to go right to the edges. We don't want the contact cement interfering with this piece of plywood here or this piece of plywood here. It's really just for this strip. Again, just to kind of hold it in place. Okay. Just drag this off to the side a little bit. Okay, this is the first time we've used contact cement, so wish us luck. To help us out with the rolling job here, we'll start at this end and we'll kind of roll it that way, and we'll use this little piece of PVC pipe here to kind of help us get it down nice and even so that we don't get a lot of bubbles and things like that. But for now, I think we have to wait 15 or 20 minutes before we can put it down. I think the glue has to set just a little bit, and then we'll lay it down. So we'll see you in a couple minutes. So I'll help you pick it up. Keep it, you can hold it from both, there you go, perfect. So I'm going to grab this.
Yep.
I'm going to take this, and you just go with whatever I do here.
Okay. Yeah, I think
it's going to fall okay?
I think so.
Okay. So now, we'll do this. Okay, you can move your chair out of the way there. And take that roller and just roll it right to when it goes past that. Okay. And we'll do it again. Okay. How does that, yep, doesn't seem to be lifting off at all, so that's good. All right, so I think we're good. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a little land bridge done here with the grass mat, and now we'll have to trim, some of this away. We still have some overlap here. This overlap here is going to be fine because the grass mat from this piece of plywood will cover that seam. Same with over here. So we just got to trim this end here and this end here, and then we'll be good. For now, we're going to put the grass mat from the small piece of plywood back over, and then we're going to re-cleat it at this end. So it looks like we'll have to do a little trimming right here. All right, I think we've got it. So we've got our big piece of plywood, our land bridge, our small piece of plywood, and our makeshift bridge in the foreground there. It's all back together. There are a couple of seams that we'll have to deal with, the seams of the grass on the small piece of plywood side over there and the big piece of plywood side over here. But I think we'll probably end up covering those seams with some, landscaping features like a tunnel or something along those lines. So I think that'll be good. Again, we recycled the mat, so we're using the same grass mats that we used last time and just kind of replaced them. We re-cleated them. We drew them pretty taut again and then clamped them down. So they're pretty tight. And again, the only part that's glued is that land bridge part that we just went over. We contact cemented that down because that's a small piece, and more just so that it didn't slide around under there. But yeah, so I think the next step is to start laying out the track. We'll have to think about what to do for a bridge. Again, temporary, so we'll put something cool in place. And that little hole in the middle there, maybe we'll do something like create a, like a fake water feature pond or something like that underneath there. But yeah, so I think that's it for now. And next step, lay down the track. So we've got the track laid down on our new layout configuration here. So as you can see, we did 2 loops of HO scale track on the outside. We really like the ability to run 2 trains side by side. I think we had a lot of fun with that when we were doing our, our Thomas the Tank Engine Universe reviews, where we could run the twins side by side and get kind of nice shots of that. So we wanted to replicate that over here. So we have 2 HO tracks running side by side, and we're running our Floreat Salopia Loco and our Festanoig and Welsh there in yellow, running that too. We haven't run those in a while, and those are really nice looking locomotives. So we decided to take them out for this kind of inaugural run here. And then we also put in a loop of N scale in the middle, which we kind of use as narrow gauge. So, so it kind of fits into our HO world here. So we're pretty happy with the layout here. So our projects for the future as we move forward will be to put a mountain of sorts in that green space right there. and then we'd like to build a tunnel, to add a tunnel element in there as well. So that's going to be coming up in addition to the bridge. So we'll keep you up to date on that as far as that goes. But we'll continue with our review of our HO scale Thomases. We still have a few of those to do, and so we'll be doing those reviews and runs on this layout here. So we're looking forward to kind of building this out. But just to show you how we kind of reconfigured our layout and the process that we used to go through it, hopefully will be fun to watch. Now, as far as people who want to start a layout, maybe you've got kids or nephews or whatever, but this hobby is really kind of for everybody. And so this is really easy to do. I mean, we picked up the sawhorses, as I might have mentioned earlier in the video, a pair of sawhorses, these cheap ones here at Home Depot for, I think, $29.99 at Christmas time, but I think they're about $40 now. So you pick up a few of those, you pick up a sheet of plywood. I don't think that this Woodland Scenics grass mats are too expensive, and you can get a locomotive and some cars for pretty cheap. So I think this is a good way to go about it. You'll notice our layout isn't as elaborate as some of the really nice ones that you see on YouTube. Those take quite a bit of time and I think are probably fairly expensive, but you can get into the hobby and set up something like this, I think, pretty easily. So hopefully that this hopefully will inspire some people to go ahead and do that. This is April here in New England, so we're going to be starting to spend more time out on the garden railroad. We got to get that going, and we'll shoot some videos out there. But yeah, we love the HO and we love the N scale, so we'll keep at this, and we'll keep throwing videos out there of the things we're working on and some of the new products we buy. Give you a look at those. So anyway, we'll see you in the next video.